Good afternoon. I'm trying to... right, here we go. Now then, in the first place, before I do anything else, I want to say, and I suspect that I'm doing this on behalf of all the foreign visitors here to Algeria, a big, big thank you to the British Council for inviting us. Why? Well, because for me personally, I've never been to Algeria before. This is my very first day in Algeria. And it's very exciting. So yes, of course, there are things that we like to tell you about what we do, but what I personally am most looking forward to, and I suspect, again, that I speak for many of my fellow presenters, what I'm mostly looking forward to is talking to you, working with you, and listening to you, so that when I fly home, I will have a better idea of English teaching in this beautiful country. And that's something I'm greatly looking forward to. But to the British Council, thank you very much for the invitation. Now, one of the things I do is I'm a tutor on the MA TESOL of the New School. The New School is a university in New York. I don't live in New York, but it's an online MA TESOL. And one of the things that we do, most often, that I do with my students there, together with my colleague Carol Leatherby, is we ask them to think of how they would, what metaphor they would use to describe a lesson. Is it a journey? Is it a meal? Is it a play? Is it a film? What is it? What kind of a metaphor is it? Why do we do that? Well, we do it, I suppose, because of the work of Lakoff and Johnson in a famous book called The Metaphors We Live By. We also do it, I suppose, because of the work of people like Scott Thornbury and Penny Earr. I'm very pleased to be Scott Thornbury's warm-up man, and because Scott wrote an article in the 1990s, I suspect, precisely on this issue. And so many of us, methodology writers and trainers, have used this idea of trying to find a metaphorical way of describing what we do as an insight into what we do. Because when you try and find a metaphor to describe what teaching is, what a lesson is, you get insights into how the world works. And so I've come up with a metaphor which I've used to try and understand for myself a little bit more about how learners get language, how they get the English that every learner of a foreign language would like to have. And so let me introduce you to, this is, as you can see, Stenocara gracilicus. Have you ever come across Stenocara gracilicus? No? Any idea where it comes from? I think it's one of the most brilliant creatures on God's earth. And it lives here, which, as I'm sure you'll recognize, is down south. That's the Namib Desert in Namibia, and it's one of the driest places on earth. It's not the driest places on earth, but it's one of the driest places on earth. And that's why the most common name for this is not Stenocara gracilicus, but the Namib Desert beetle. Now the problem about the Namib Desert is it's very dry. There's no water. But what there is fog, clouds, vapor in the air. So this little creature is quite extraordinary, because when the clouds roll in, it points itself towards the wind, it upends its backside, so it's about 45 degrees angle, and little minute droplets of liquid form on its back. And because it's at that 45-degree angle, they gradually drip down into its mouth. And so the Namib Desert beetle survives with the most incredible sort of natural engineering, I suppose, in an environment where many other creatures don't stand a chance. Of course, we're all familiar with this. We're all familiar, for example, with the spider's web, where moisture collects on the spider's web and falls down the web. And people who are worried about the lack of water around the world have studied the Namib Desert beetle and spider's webs and all sorts of other things, and have come up with fog catchers. And this is a student from the University of Chile in the Atacama Desert. Now the Atacama Desert is even drier than than the Namib Desert, the desert in Namibia. It's the driest, it is the driest place on Earth. But students from the University of Chile have created fog catchers which do what the Namib desert beetle does. In other words, those things you can see behind the student, those big panels, are actually specially designed to collect vapor from the Chamanacas, I think they're called, which is the rolling cloud that rolls in from the west in Chile from the sea. And so, and water collects on those screens and drops into collecting places, and you can see the blue tank there. This is another fog catcher from above the city of Lima in Peru. Now, anyone who's been to Peru knows that it's full of clouds and fog all the time. But the people in the shanty towns up above the city have no water supply. So they've come up with using fog catchers to collect water from vapor, taking lessons from the Namib beetle, taking lessons from spiders' webs and so on and so forth. Here's a design by an Italian architect called Arturo Vittori. And this is the Walker Water project in Ethiopia. And it's called Walker Water because the Ethiopians have a tree called the Walker tree, which is terribly important to them. And once again, this structure, which also has an awning for protection against the sun, is designed to collect vapor from the clouds that are there, because it's a very arid place in some parts of Ethiopia. And of course, if we go just down the road to Morocco,